Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Welcome everybody, please come sit down in one of these lovely blue chairs and prepare yourself. Together we will go off on an adventure of inquiry. Q&A time at the Rishikesh Kirtan Fest. Wonderful to have you all here. And for the next hour and a half, we'll be taking questions. We require people to take the bold step to publicly ask a question. We honor pretty much all questions. It would take a really, really strange question for us not to take it. But we're happy to get all kinds of questions, even simple questions, even questions that you feel probably everybody already knows this. But we're happy to receive your questions. And David has a question to get us started. Coming from Oregon.
Coming from the West Coast. You're from the East Coast, right? So I've done a little bit of reading on Hare Krishna, and I've heard about this idea of a personal relationship developing with Krishna. And I know that most of your speaking, you speak about scholarship and scholarly things, but could you talk for a bit about how either you've found that type of relationship and in particular the kind of guidance you might get, wisdom you might get on a moment by moment basis, not quite as much out of the book, but this kind of sense of living it.
Thank you. So I'm going to mention the esoteric, and then I'm going to bring it back to the more approachable. Because the lineage that we come in is a unique lineage amongst Vedanta. You're familiar with the term Vedanta. So Vedantins are those that are taking this fascinating body of texts, the Vedic scriptures, and drawing truth from them, placing faith in them, and seeing the world through their knowledge, through the knowledge of these ancient texts. And that begins with an understanding of the nature of the self, that I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, I'm the Atman, the spark of spiritual energy that animates the body and that perceives the world through the body and the mind. So that's conventional Vedanta. Understanding the nature of the world that we're moving through, that it's composed of matter, that it's constantly fluctuating, but I'm steady, I'm beyond it. Understanding that this world has a way of drawing us into illusion, making us forget who we are, and then applying knowledge and practices to realize our own nature again, or self-realization. That's confident. We can call that conventional Vedanta, and there are two different schools of that. But one of the two schools goes deeper into the idea that behind all of this, behind the existence of myself, behind the existence of the world that we're moving through, is, and sometimes the word Ishvara is used, there is a being that is in control of it, that can make it move and make it all rotate and make it all spin and support it all, and not only all of that, but also accompany every living being from within, sharing messages both externally through sacred texts, through the words of great souls and the examples of great souls, through the movements of the world and the movements of our life, speaking to us, nudging us, encouraging us to turn back and reconnect. And that's the purpose of our life in this world. But again, one of these schools goes deeper into that connection that you have with that being, and that connection is revealed through love. That there's love there for you to accept that we may be ignoring or resisting. And when one turns that way, then there's love that one begins to feel as well. And that's called bhakti, this two-way relationship with the divine, with the divine person. And In our particular lineage, it'll go into a lot of very refined detail about the varieties of the kinds of love one can share with God, the different types of intimate love one can share with God. And it will paint a whole picture of how this plays out in a spiritual realm. Some of the descriptions are so beautiful, so touching, as or more beautiful than any beautiful romance books you've ever read in your life. Really, really fantastic poetry that really, when you read it, it makes you want to cry. But in a way that's different. It's a way that's not taking you away from truth, but taking you to truth. So it becomes very special, this understanding this personal relationship. But that's something that we can't artificially adopt. It's something that has to awaken within oneself. So by practicing the practices in Vedanta of discriminating that I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, I am spirit, and moving through this world with a clearer picture of the forces that move this world, of time, of karma, of the three modes of material nature and how they affect the mind. Having all that knowledge, through it achieving a level of peace, letting go of the things that we need to let go of in this world, then from that place of peace, one can fill that space, that stillness, with beautiful poetry and beautiful descriptions of the Supreme Being. And that's when it can really take root and grow. Like a seed, like a little sprout in the heart. It starts off as just a tender little sprout. It needs to be protected. But if you water it with hearing more about the Supreme, not the Supreme as just the controller, but the Supreme as that supreme powerful being that submits to love, then that the heart can really fill with these descriptions, the mind can fill with these descriptions, and this sprout can start to grow, and one can really understand what is prema, or what is love for God. But again, we can't, if one artificially imitates this, you get nowhere. But if one approaches it with great respect and practices it with real sincerity, then it will grow. If one learns to follow that path nicely, it will grow.
You can't fake it till you make it.
You can't fake it till you make it, but you can follow till you make it. You can follow till you make it. And so much can be said about that. But I said I would speak a bit about the esoteric. When you really read these books of poetry about Krishna, and they're not ordinary books, they have all the same deep, powerful philosophy of Vedanta through them. But at the same time, they're heart-touching stories of love in many different varieties of love. Parental love, the love of friendship, romantic love. And even amongst these categories, there are many subcategories. Certain types of parental love, certain types of romantic love, certain types of friendship. Great variety. Oh, it can be so fascinating, so nice. But again, that's the esoteric. We approach that, we respect that, we aspire for that, but we also follow. We follow without imitating. But so then how does that relationship begin to open up? Well, the idea is we're cultivating the ability to see God not just in a temple, but begin to see God in many different ways that he manifests. It's said that in this day and age, the most accessible way that God manifests is through his name. And that through this chanting of the Mahamantra, when it's accompanied with music and when it's done with a group of like-minded people, it becomes easy access. Just like sometimes there's water available underneath the ground, right? And you can dig deep into, you can dig a well, and drill into the ground. It's very hard work. And sometimes water just comes up in the form of a pond, and it's right there and it's available. So the same thing is available, but in some ways it's easier access. And so this chanting is very easy access, right? And many people will say, "Oh I had such an experience. I don't know quite what went on there." you know. Sometimes people just walk into it not really knowing what they're walking into, and they're like, I don't know what to make of that experience, but it was the most moving thing I've ever had happen in my life. And if you go in there tonight, you may have feelings like this. Um, Another way that God is can speak to you, and you can speak to God, is through reading about Him. Through the bug, I really highly recommend the Bhagavad Gita and the text, the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the culmination of all of Vedanta. It's the cream of Vedanta. It says so itself. It's part of that body of literature, and it says this is the real deep essence of it. If you read that text, it's like it's not even like it's a book telling you about God. It's that the book is God. It's a representation in sound form and printed on page, but it is that eternal being. It manifests through that. Sometimes you could say like you can know an author by reading their book, and there's truth in that, and this has all that, but still more. It's more intrinsically that person. So by reading these texts, and if you make it and just like any yoga practice, if it's practiced daily, steadily, regularly, that's when it starts to take root. If it's done occasionally, weekly, even not so much daily. So Nityam Bhagavata Sevya, this is how it describes how you should approach it. Nityam means like steadily all the time. Nityam Bhagavata Sevya. This is how you connect or serve God in that form of the Bhagavat, of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's another way. But another really important way, and this is really fundamental, and I think it may go right to the heart of your question, is that something we take for granted. We might say sentimentally, yes, I believe God is everywhere. Yes, I believe God is in my heart. But how much time do you spend talking to God in your own heart? The yogis do this. They open up that line of communication. They're not ignoring God in the heart. The idea, there's a beautiful verse in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. If to me, it's a very meaningful verse. It's a really, in my own life, it's been a really powerful verse, a life changer for me. The previous verses are talking about how God exists in the heart of every living being. And then it begins to describe how different types of yogis approach God in the heart. And basically 4 paths are outlined. One is the path of, you could say, Ashtanga yoga or Dhyana yoga, a meditative path where you go into seclusion and go very deep within. Another is called the Jnana yoga. There, one, again, kind of secludes himself and begins to go within and analyze all their inner desires. Note how they are illusory in nature, kind of through cold analytical process, they kind of break all those desires and become free of them, and then find God within. Another way to do it is to dedicate all of your activities to God. This is called karma yoga. In other words, your social roles and responsibilities in society and family. And then another way is bhakti. And it says, especially, it talks about the first limb of bhakti, which is called shravana, or hearing these sacred texts. That simply by hearing this information, one can begin to open up a channel between themselves and God within the heart. And when one does that, when one feels the presence of God within their own heart, I implore you all to, when I speak these words, to don't think, oh, that's impossible. This is just talk. We hear about this. No, you can have it. You can have it if you make it a priority. You can feel God in your own heart. Then when you begin to feel it, how it changes one. And I'm going to read you that verse right now because no, just open up the 13th chapter and I'll find it. Yeah. Let's see. Chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita, text number yes. Yes, text number 29. Chapter 13, text number 29. Life changer. Are you ready for it? I need to hear some enthusiasm from the crowd, from the people in line over here. Yes? Okay. One who sees the super soul, God within the heart, Super soul is like, it's kind of a straight up English translation of the Sanskrit Padam Atma. Atma means the soul, the self. Padam means the superior, the supreme. So the yogis are saying there's two souls within every living body. There's us and there's God, the Paramatma. There's the soul, which is us, and then there's the Atma, and then there's the Paramatma, the supreme soul or God within the heart of everyone. So when one realizes that God is in my own heart, that God is in my own body at all times, this is what it goes. This is one thing that happens. One who sees the super soul equally present everywhere. I see it not only in my own heart, but in your heart, your heart, everywhere. One who sees the super soul equally present everywhere in every living being does not degrade themselves by their mind. Thus they approach the transcendental destination. Now think about that. They do not degrade themselves by their mind. Okay, like for instance, in English we have this thing called cramping my style. Are you familiar with that? Like sometimes, like when a kid's growing up, and then they're just the sweetest little kid, and they're always sweet to the parents, but then they hit about 13, and they're kind of like with the parents, like, just stay away from me a little bit. You know, like, you're cramping my style. I want to express myself in this world with some freedom, without inhibition, with my own style. And when you're around, I feel kind of like I can't do that. You've heard of that before, cramping the style? Yeah. But that can be a negative thing. It can be kind of oppressive, but it also can be a very positive thing, right? Sometimes people that don't have good relationships with their parents, not a strong father figure, not a strong mother figure, then in their lives, they can really go off track. They can lead to lives of crime, lives of destitution, imprisonment, you know, all kind of things. Whereas if we have a strong, loving foundation connection to our parents, it's very positive. And it does kind of create boundaries through which one can operate naturally. And so the idea is, if I know God is in my own heart, well, let me ask you this question. Do any of you have a figure in your life, a person in your life that you admire? Okay, that's good. Only one person has that they admire. But do you have someone in your life that you admire, and when you are around them, they bring out the best in you? Yes? Raise your hand if you have a person that you admire, and when you're around them, they bring out the best. No? Nobody? Okay, we got to find you some people. So it's like that. If I feel that God is in my heart at every moment, God, it brings out the best in me. It brings out the kind. How can I mistreat another person when God is in my heart and God is in their heart, and I feel it and I know it? I can't do that. You know, there is a statement in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras that I found very interesting. It lists all the yamas, right? Non-violence, celibacy, right? Brahmacharya, truthfulness, etc., etc. And it lists that for each one of these lifestyle mastery of this kind of lifestyle choice, when you master it, like say you master nonviolence, you receive a certain boon. When you master self-control, you receive a certain boon. When you master truthfulness, you receive a certain boon. And for nonviolence, would you like to hear, if you master nonviolence, if you move through this world without harming any living being, if you really make that a priority in your life and you live it deeply, internally, externally, you receive a boon. Would you like to know what that boon is? Okay. That boon is that within your radius, right? No violence takes place. In other words, the nonviolence that the ahimsa, the nonviolence that you've embodied, it begins to spread and influence others in your region, you know? Now, would you like me to share a personal example of how this affected my own life? Yes? Okay. One time, I was the victim in this case, people, okay? But one time, I had a friend. We were both quite, I like to think, serious spiritual practitioners. We were part of a spiritual community. This person kind of had a role in that community as a leader. But we were friends, but sometimes friends, you're more friends externally and it's not real deep, you know? And I fear that it wasn't as deep as it could have been. And when it's like that, there can be jealousy, there can be competition, these kind of things can enter into those peer relationships. Yes? Sometimes the peer relationships are the most difficult. For whatever reason, he became upset with me. I'm telling you, it was not at all deserved, I believe, to this day. but he's a very good person. I don't mean to. But he kind of like banished me, kind of kicked me out of the community in a sense. You know, he kind of took that opportunity to do that. I didn't worry about it. I knew it didn't. But what happened was there's a person in both of our lives that we both admire, that we both really treasure, and who really embodies nonviolence. And that person was going to be visiting where we live like a week or two later. And before that person arrived, this friend of mine came forward and he apologized to me. And I'm not even saying this to judge the sincerity of the apology, but what I'm saying is I'm certain that he understood that when this person that we both admire came and asked about me, he would have to explain what he did. And then he realized, how can I explain this to this person? It'll be revealed that I'm operating in a degraded way. You understand? In a degraded way. It's not the best of me, it's the worst of me that's rising up. Right? And so it couldn't exist in this person's presence. The person's presence entering into the field made it impossible for him to commit this act of violence. And so he retreated from that violent act. Does that make sense? And so similarly, if the most admirable person, God, if you feel his presence all the time, presence within your own heart and presence within the heart of others, then it brings out the best in you. It brings out the good qualities, and it gains control of the lower qualities, weakens them, and ultimately frees you from them. So this cultivation of the vision of the feeling of the presence of God within one's own heart and recognizing God within the heart of all others is a fundamental, extremely important part of yoga. But if God is in the heart of every living being, as we move, let me ask you a question. You don't have to answer this question. You can just internally answer it to yourself. How many times in a day do you speak to God within your own heart? Okay? Ask yourself this question. And then think about, is there a more important relationship than you have than this relationship? And so going back to your original question, David, what I'm saying is you asked about like a personal relationship with God and how it starts and how we get that moving. This is one really important way. It's called prayer, right? And even the word prayer may kind of like stir up images in us of being in some kind of rigid church system and we have to kneel down and recite certain prayers that we may not exactly feel, and the whole thing may feel like, or like when I was growing up, it was like you commit sins and then you got to go in front of the priest and then you tell the priest, you have to admit, I did this. You're in a box and he's on the other side and he knows who's sitting in the box and you know who's sitting on the other end, even though you're not supposed to. And he tells you, tell me all the sins you've committed. And then you sit there and feeling guilty and like saying, I did this and I did that. And then he says, well, now say these prayers. Right? And then you're like, what's going on here? It's like, rather than really, and I don't say this to criticize any particular religion, but I'm just saying it can turn us off to the idea of prayer, potentially. That this is just something I use to burn off my sin or something like that. I say it mechanically. I don't really mean it. I don't really feel anything. But prayer doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be mechanical. It doesn't have to be external. It can be the most real thing in your life, where you open up to God in your heart and you speak. You speak about what you desire. You speak about how you would like to change. You speak your gratitude. You can speak your fear. You can open up and you can entirely open up your heart to God. And you can let God know, I have a mind full of desires, you know that. But those aren't what I really want in life. You have a way of responding to my desires, and I want to inform you that the desires that are programmed in my mind, I wish to transcend them. And I wish that my only desires be desires of love, be desires in connection with you. You can speak these things to God. And I recommend in my own life, the most deep times that I do it is right before I go to sleep. You can speak to God before you go to sleep. Make a habit of it. It doesn't even have to be long. It can just be a few minutes or a few things that you express to God in your own heart right before you go to sleep. Always some gratitude, right? If we don't feel gratitude, we're not really perceiving things correctly. So many things you've given me. So many ways you've cared for me, right? I've been off on this wild, independent adventure, off into this dark world. You stayed with me all along, and look how you've cared for me, and look at the opportunities you've given me. Please help me appreciate them more deeply. Thank you, and then share what you went through in that day. How you wish you may have performed or acted on a higher level, in a way more pleasing, in a way more saintly, in a way more in harmony with your will, with your beautiful divine will. Everything can be opened up. So that speaking to God in the heart, once you do it like before you go to bed, then you might find I can do it when I wake up. Maybe just after I take a shower and I get dressed. I take a few deep breaths, I go within, I speak. Then there's when you walk into the temple. It's a natural time to speak, right? But throughout the day, one can open up that conversation, become more natural. You can be having a regular conversations, and the more you do, the more you'll hear. The more that conversation will not feel artificial, but you'll actually be given inner guidance like that. You'll get it from within, and you also see it coming from without all the time. But if one doesn't work on it, if one doesn't cultivate, this isn't delusion, although many people would probably categorize it that way. It really isn't. It really isn't. So that's one thing. So I mentioned Kirtan. I mentioned reading books like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm mentioning now prayer. These are all powerful ways. There are other powerful ways too, but maybe that's a good place to start. Is that okay, David? Okay. Thank you very much. Nice question. Nothing more important. Nothing more important. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Cersei.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. I'm wondering, I was talking about this with some friends recently, but now I guess, I'm just reflecting on it. When I live in ashrams, how am I supposed to tell the difference between pleasing God and pleasing a devotee? Because although they are both important, I feel like maybe sometimes there could be devotees who really like to be in control. And so how do I know that it's pleasing God and not just their ego?
When you live in an ashram, just like for instance, if you get a job, you enter into a community of people, and that community has certain leadership and certain roles to play and certain expectations that one agrees to accept while in stepping into that place or into that role. An ashram is no different. It can't be the idea in the ashram is there's supposed to be harmony. There's supposed to be a sense of harmony. And so harmony means that people just can't be doing whatever they want. There has to be some agreement that I accept the values of this place, and I'm willing to operate in harmony with them. If I'm not willing to, then it's not the place where I'm meant to be. If I look at the values and say I'm ready to operate in harmony with this, then one accepts that. Now, people are going to have to represent that, and how well they represent those values is another question. So one might get the sense, I agree to operate in harmony with certain values, but I don't feel they're being represented very well here. And I feel like what I'm being asked to do isn't necessarily harmonious with those values. I'm a little concerned about this. So that concern might be the kind of thing that you can talk about. or it might be the kind of thing we're talking about is not well received. Both of these are possibilities. And so then you have a choice to make. Am I comfortable here? What I'm benefiting from it, does it outweigh what I'm less happy about? And if that's the case, which it very well may be, it may be that this isn't a perfect situation, but it's a good situation and it's better than any other situation I have in this world. So let me learn to work within the imperfect situation and be as positive a force of energy as I've ever seen. There's one great, I was talking about people that we admire in life. And there's one person that I have the deepest admiration for. He's a gentle person. He's a very saintly person. And he was getting called upon to enter into a community that was very problematic. A lot of tension, a lot of conflict, a lot of lower level behavior. And I expressed to him, I'm concerned. I'm concerned for you. You know, you give so much, you take on so much, and now you're taking on this. And I told him, I've seen with my own eyes that there's like a lot of low level energy going on in this place, you know? And he said to me, he just said like this, you ready? I'll never forget this. He said, well, what I found is that the best antidote to low level energy is to try to bring in some high level energy. Okay? And I thought, well, I can't argue with that, you know? In other words, he was willing to, rather than say, I judge this community, I criticize this community, I shun this community, I'm better than this community. Rather, he said, okay, there's definitely is negativity here. I'm going to try to come in and be a positive force. And he's a person that I can see. He does this without judgment. He does this with patience. He does this with a type of humility. And I see he's effective at it. He does make a lower level place higher through their own behavior. But one may feel like I don't really have the potency to do that. I wish I did. I don't have the potency. I don't have the platform. This is beginning to, the negatives are beginning to outweigh the positives. Then one might want to consider, again, can we talk about this? Can I speak to someone else who may be able to talk about this? Or maybe this isn't the place for me anymore. Your question was how do we know? Right? I think that was your question. Like, how was that your question? And that none of those kind of questions aren't easy to answer. How do I know whether it's them or me? How do I know how much of it is them and how much of it is me? How do I know whether I should stay or I should go? There's no simple formula I can give you to answer that question. But I can tell you this. It requires honesty. And honesty with oneself can be one of the most difficult things. And I believe that maybe more than any time I've seen in my 60-year life, more than any time in this lifetime of mine, I believe we live in a world where the one that's seen fighting for justice is kind of an identity that we all want to embrace, when maybe it's not always that pure. It's easy to slip into that costume, the one fighting for justice. What's much more difficult is to come in and be a positive force, to recognize what's less than perfect, accept it, and then try to improve it. That's a much greater challenge. The easiest thing to do in the world is to get on the internet and start criticizing everyone. Simplest thing in the world. What's much harder to do is to actually take a role of responsibility in such a community. And what may still be harder to do is to be a positive force that can change it. So, but you know, saying all that, you have to take care of yourself too. You know, you have to take care of yourself. You don't, especially if you feel it's in any way harmful to you, to your psyche, to your devotional life, then it's something we can move on. Spiritual institution and material world, very difficult to make them work together. Always a challenge. At the same time, the spiritual institutions are very valuable in this world. Without them, we'd really be lost. So, no easy answers there. All right, thank you very much. Whew. Any other questions out there? We're looking for another question. Eager and open to another question. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. I feel this is referring to the class we had yesterday about Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15. So you were saying the time goes by and the body gets old. And as we get old, we get mature, we get wiser. I think so, most of us. So what's the use of scriptures if the true self has the nature already, it knows everything? What's the point of learning from scriptures? Like why? Just to reveal what we know already? Thank you.
I don't believe that simply aging gives one wisdom. But I believe that aging can be a helpful circumstance for wisdom to grow. Okay. A lot of people, as they get older, they get more bitter. A lot of people, as they get older, the resentments really get strong. Or a lot of people, when they get older, they start to try to go back to the past. Or they just waste the time. You're from India, where there's a real culture of embracing wisdom as one gets older. I'm from the United States, where there's a real culture of wasting the last years of your life. And they create all kind of ways to do it. Sometimes it's very sad. I know that Srila Prabhupada, when he came to America and he saw the older people and how they were spending the end of their life, different activities they were doing that had no real value, that were just kind of like to burn off the rest of the time. He cried. Sometimes they're thinking, this is just what I want to do. Now I don't have to work anymore and I just want to play golf the rest of my life. Or I'm just going to sit in front of the television. A lot of them nowadays in America, they because there's this 24-hour news channels. And they just sit and watch the 24-hour news channel all day and get upset about the politics. What a waste of one's final years. So it's not that it automatically happens, but if one's hearing wisdom from texts like Bhagavad Gita and others as they age, then it can be so much easier to come to terms with one's own aging, because one's realizing that I live in a world where everything material is changing. All the externals are changing, including my own body. But I also have realized by hearing this knowledge and reflecting on it steadily that amongst everything changing, I am steady. And when one really has that, then they can transcend the fear of a changing world and changing body, and ultimately the fear of death. So, yes, aging can be helpful. Other things that happen with aging is our senses become weaker. Like for instance, our digestion becomes weaker. And that means I need to eat a more simple diet. And so after doing that for a certain time, I've given up on trying to enjoy the world through eating delicious things, because when I eat delicious things, I feel worse afterwards. And so then kind of God takes that away and says that life is not meant for tasting delicious foods. Right? Sexually, we lose our powers in this field. God says life is not meant for enjoying sex. Right? And in all these other kind of ways, I used to be able to play sports. Now if I do it, I get injured. God says life is not meant for just playing sports. So as the body's aging, it can be helpful. It can help us let go of the things that we've clung to so tight throughout life. But If it's not being informed with spiritual insights, then there's every chance that that wisdom won't really deepen. So both together. All right? Thank you. Okay. We've been having nice conversations every morning in the hall here from 9 a.m. till 10 a.m. So you're all welcome to come and take part if you like. But for now, do we have any other questions? Looking for questions out there. Even people that are eating can ask questions. People that, yes, in the back.
Can you pass the mic?
Oh, sorry. Wait.
Thank you. I'm Ken. I don't find your teaching to be scholarly at all, or you allude to the scholarly, but immediately sieve it into something that could reach anybody immediately. I find. I would like to ask you about how the Mahamantra was received, and how the Mahamantra might be different. Say there's Gayatri, there's the other Hindu mantras. So is there not a conversation, but is there something worth? I don't know. Is there something you could say about that?
Thank you, Ken. And I've really been appreciating your presence in all of our talks. Your question is actually, after nearly 40 years of chanting the Mahamantra, a question that I'm trying to dig deeper into. But let me just share some things that you might find interesting and speak to you. I want to make sure that we have the same frame of reference as we go forward. So I'll ask you some questions as we go forward. But there's a tradition of bhakti yoga coming down for centuries. And that tradition really took off in India in a big way about 1,000 years ago. It was always there. But there was a great teacher named Ramanujacharya. Are you familiar with that name? No. He wrote commentaries on Vedanta, on the Upanishads, on Vedanta Sutra, on Bhagavad Gita, and other books. And he really laid out how special bhakti is and how to see it and how to practice it. And that started a wave of bhakti all over India. And he was followed a couple centuries later by another powerful figure named Madhvacharya, who did the same kind of thing. And this started to spread at first all over South India and then over the rest of India. So that was a game changer in the history of India. But the kind of bhakti they taught was a kind of love for God, but particularly, especially for Lord Vishnu, and especially in a mood of like reverence. A kind of appreciation for God that's not so different from, let's say, like a Christian or Jewish, maybe different, but in any case, where there's reverence blended into that love. Now, about 500 years ago, in a place called Vrindavan, the birthplace of Krishna, the place of Krishna's leelas or pastimes, not so far from here, about 500 years ago, there were groups there was like about 4 powerful figures in bhakti. They arose around the same time and in the same place, or at least they visited that same place in Vrindavan. And they were taking the teachings of Vedanta that were there in the past and churning them more and finding that the deepest essence of all these spiritual teachings is a type of love that's far more intimate. Okay? And they revealed and they found within these texts statements where Krishna speaks, Krishna being that form that one can love most intimately, where he's saying the kind of love where someone has reverence for me doesn't move me in the same way that when someone loves me intimately. Like imagine you were a very powerful figure like a president or prime minister of a nation, Everybody knew you. Everybody showed you respect. And they showed their appreciation and love for you with respect. Always Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister. You might appreciate that and reciprocate with that. But what would mean more to you is when you go home and your wife doesn't treat you like you're the prime minister, but she treats you like an equal, but with a deeper, intimate love. She really knows you. And her love isn't just something you're like, oh, thank you, let me reciprocate with you. But it's like it moves your heart. And the words she speaks, they can even captivate your mind and your heart, this intimate lover that you have. Does that make sense? So what they became the heads of lineages. What these great, powerful spiritual figures coming up at the same time around 500 years ago, they began to reveal this deeper churned understanding of Vedanta where there's this intimate love, this prema, this very sweet, intimate, powerful love. And they began to teach that. Now, some of these figures, the way they did it was they kind of were not so interested in scholarly stuff. They weren't so interested in renunciation. What they were interested in composing and singing songs of love. And those songs they would write, and to this day their followers learn those songs and they cultivate a feeling in the heart through singing those songs. It's a beautiful thing. Really beautiful thing. But here's where this Mahamantra chanting comes from. That amongst those lineages, and those leaders of those lineages, there was one named Sri Chaitanya. Now, Sri Chaitanya, as he's understood in our lineage, I'm going to share that with you right now. We're going to get very esoteric. Are you all prepared to get esoteric? Because it's going to require opening, attentiveness, first of all. But also really trying to understand some subtle stuff now. But really beautiful stuff. You ready? Okay. The way that Sri Chaitanya is described and understood in these sacred texts that tell us about his life and his teachings are that Sri Chaitanya, who appeared 500 years ago in Bengal, that he is non-different from Krishna. He is Krishna, but in coming in the most really special way. Now, hear me when I say this. It says that there's nothing more powerful than the feeling of love in the heart. And there's no more powerful love in the heart than love for God, who is the most perfect object of our love. Everything that we might love in another person is there in God in full. So when you love, maybe we've all been fortunate enough in our life to feel a deep sense of love for another. And whatever we're loving that's there in the other is simply a spark of the splendor of God. And therefore he becomes the most perfect object of love and most fulfilling object of love. So every living being has the potential to feel that love within themselves, to awaken that love within themselves. Every living being in existence, except one, God himself. Because his object will never be himself. You understand? So he's seeing Radha, the embodiment of divine love. And what she's feeling for him, the love that she's feeling in her heart for him, he's saying, feeling her love for me is an incredibly wonderful experience. But what she feels in her heart, the experience of feeling that love for me is beyond what I'm experiencing, even as God. I want to know, what is that love she's feeling? What is that experience she's feeling? So he comes as Sri Chaitanya to become a devotee of Krishna and experience his deepest love in this most intimate way, Radha's love. And he succeeds. He becomes a student of Radha's love. He becomes trained. God himself submits and becomes trained to follow a practice that will awaken in him the feelings that Srimati Radharani feels for Krishna, the deepest, most powerful and intense prema. Okay? Whew, this is getting esoteric. Are you all still with me? Okay. It gets more exciting. There's a teaching in bhakti that prema is a feeling in a very soft, felt in the softest of hearts. And when that same feeling of prema that's you feel when you see Radha and Krishna, if you turn that to the rest of the world, that same feeling, that same feeling manifests as compassion. It's love when it's looking at God, and when you turn the same heart around, if that same feeling manifests as compassion. Does that make sense? Interesting idea? Interesting theological concept? Okay. So the idea here is this, that Sri Chaitanya is Krishna himself feeling the most intense love of God. And when he takes the most intense manifestation of love of God in the softest of hearts and turns it to the rest of the world, it manifests as the deepest and most powerful compassion imaginable. And this is where things get interesting. Now, the love, the intimate love that was going on in Vrindavan, and that's explained in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam amongst Krishna's loving associates. He decides and feels that very rare people in existence have ever even known about this. Even the people that study Vedanta, they don't know about this. Even the people that practice bhakti don't know exactly about this most deepest and powerful kind of love, intimate love, that really moves the heart of God. It's a very rare thing. Usually the way that you understand it is you're born in that place. And mathematically, that's a very few number of people amongst all the living beings in existence. But when Sri Chaitanya is feeling this intense compassion, he says, I want everyone to feel this. And you know what? I don't care about their qualification. I don't care if they're qualified or not. Usually to advance in Vedanta practices, it takes a lot of qualification, tolerance, austerity, intense drive, humility, etc. There's like a whole list of qualities that the yogi needs to have. When the compassion is being felt this deep and powerful, it's like, I don't care if they're qualified or not. I want them to have it. Okay? But Sri Chaitanya does something interesting. Rather than compose his own songs, he reaches back. First thing he does is he takes sannyas. He shaves his head, puts on the orange cloth, walks away from home because he wants to share it with people that are Vedantins, and that is respected in their world. That's one thing he does. But the other thing does is, rather than just write songs which might not be as widely respected, he goes back to Vedanta. He goes back to the Upanishads and he finds a mantra, the Hare Krishna mantra. Now, what is the Hare Krishna mantra? Hare Krishna. Hare refers to, can anyone say? Radha, Srimati Radharani. The feminine energy of God, personified, and the deepest love of God personified in a feminine form. So Hare is calling out, O Radha, O Radha. Hare and Krishna. So it's Radha and Krishna together when we say Hare Krishna. So it's Hare Krishna. And note that when Krishna enjoys, he desires, he wants, that when he's spoken about, his devotee is spoken about. He likes to be, when you see paintings of Krishna, the real ones, he's never alone, he's always accompanied. He always has his devotees there. Even if it's a cow, or a peacock, or the gopis, or his friends, he always wants to be connected with his friends because he's all about love. That's his only interest. So his devotee comes first, Hare Krishna, Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna. Then Krishna Krishna, Radha Radha, right? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Then Hare Rama. Who is Rama? Rama also means Krishna. Rama means that reservoir of all pleasure. So Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. It's Radha Krishna. It's a dance. Do you see the dance there? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You've seen paintings of the Rasa Lila, where there's Krishna and he's standing between all the gopis in a circle, and in the middle is Radha and Krishna. This is called the Sarva Rasa Sarda. This is, if you take all the Vedanta, it culminates in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Srimad Bhagavatam culminates in the 10th canto, and the 10th canto culminates in this beautiful dance between Krishna and Radha and all the gopis. It's the essence of all of the spiritual teachings. And all of that, and all of the love that's in that, is in this mantra. So Sri Chaitanya, rather than write his own songs, he went to something that everybody respects, which is these ancient texts. But he's giving it to all the people that never understood this deepest essence within those texts. He wants to give it to the whole world. If he wrote his own songs, the whole world might not get it. But if he goes to Vedanta, then the whole world can respect it. And he finds a mantra that everybody else has kind of skipped right over. You know, there's 108 Upanishads, and there's just so much information, and there's all the mantras and the Vedas and all the hymns, and so many things are there. But mostly it's been skipped over. He's like, now's the time. Let me uncover this mantra, the Hare Krishna mantra, the Mahamantra, this most powerful of all mantras. And he shows that by chanting this mantra, the deepest feelings of the most intimate love begin to manifest in him. And then he says, and now I want you to have it. I want everyone to take it. You know, when you see this festival going on, quite frankly, it's just an extension of that mercy. Like a soul like Indradyumna Swami, who you may see, who's done everything to make sure that this happens, that everybody gets the holy name, that everybody gets prasadam, that everybody gets to hear about Krishna. It's the extension of the same thing. I don't care. We're not cared about how wealthy a person is, if they can afford this or not. We're not cared about how learned they are, how austere they are. We want everyone to have it. Let's give them this mantra. And through this mantra, they can be exposed to Radha and Krishna and directly approach this most intimate of all loves, like that. So that's what the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is about. That's something about it. But it's unlimited. It's unlimited. These great saints have written so much about this mantra and how beautiful and wonderful and powerful it is. So thank you for your question. And I really, you see, Sri Chaitanya, he especially approached big, powerful, influential people. The greatest scholars of his time, the greatest, most powerful sannyasis. And he was able to show this how much sense this understanding of Vedanta makes, that it all leads to this intense and personal divine love. And he was able to convince them of that. He also meant, just like Krishna manifests as his brother Balaram, Sri Chaitanya also extends as his companion Nityananda. It's again a manifestation of Krishna in the most beautiful and compassionate form. And he orders Nityananda, you go and you give this to everyone. And Nityananda is like the most wild and beautiful spiritual being imaginable. And he takes this mantra, and not only does he want to give it, but he begs. He literally gets on the ground, grabs people by the feet and says, please accept this. I'm giving it away. It's kind of like if in the marketplace, everybody just came out and said, you know what, we wanted to sell you this, but nobody's buying, so we're giving it away now. Please take it. Please take it. He would grab them by the feet and beg them, please accept this mantra. Just chant it with a little faith, and this love will awaken in you, and it'll be the greatest gift you've ever had. So that's what this is really all about. And if you feel something special in there when you chant, you can understand this isn't an ordinary thing. There's so many beautiful mantras. Chanting Om itself is a very deep and beautiful thing. But this mantra has the power to awaken something like all the other mantras are within it. All the rasa is in it. All the lila is in it. All the love is in it. And when you chant it, it can awaken in you. Thank you. That was a really nice question. Any more questions? Everybody wants to go into the Kirtan now. But if you would like to stick around, I'd be happy to take any other questions you might have. Question? Yes. All right. Otherwise, yes. Question. Lena, right? Okay, Lena. Lena, I'm saying it right? Lena. Lena.
So again, I didn't really quite think of one, but I like to pick your brain. What drives you personally to explore knowledge and spread knowledge the way you do and spread love and light through speaking and of wisdom and light and pulling that from your brain? What's your biggest inspiration through this is what I'm trying to get from that.
I don't know what that was. Thank you. I think when you asked questions last, I think I gave you a little of my background story, didn't I? A little bit, and I'll just give a bit more. I think I spoke to you about the night when I first was really convinced of this. Did I speak about that? No? Well, I'll just share some background information. When I was really young, like let's say 9, 10, 11, my heroes were athletes, right? I thought, wow, they're just the greatest. And as I got to like 12 or 13, I really started listening to a lot of music. And the music began to inform me in different ways. And it was kind of an age where I began to think about what's important in life. What is the meaning of life? What is the purpose? But of course, it was mixed in with all kind of other ideas of what is cool and what is pleasurable and things like that as well. But that led me a lot into like politics, thinking about justice and what's right and what's wrong and how to make the world a better place. These kind of things were on my mind, even though I had no power to do anything. But I was becoming curious. I started to read a lot of books. I read books like I'd read the autobiography of Malcolm X or the biography of Malcolm X. I would read like all kind of stuff, Communist Manifesto. I would read all this stuff. And it was interesting to me, and I had a feeling that might be my life kind of goes in this direction as some kind of, I don't know, who knows what I was fantasizing at the time, some kind of freedom fighter or so, I don't know. And when I was about 15 years old, I was deep into this underground punk rock scene in New York City. And I was wandering the streets and the parks and the stoops and engaged in all kind of conversations about life with a wide variety of people because it was all laid out there. Just in a small area of downtown New York, you could meet all kinds of people and have all kind of discussions and attend all kind of events. And so with my political leanings and ideas, I had opportunities to inquire more deeply or have different experiences. And what I began to feel within was that the people that I was looking towards that seemed to really be onto something is that they were onto something, but it was limited. It was limited. The depth of their understanding was limited to where they really understood what was wrong, but they didn't really understand how to change it. And because of that, and because of the intensity of their anger, they often began to take on the qualities of exactly what they were rebelling against. So there were people that wanted peace, but it was coming out through hostility and anger and even violence. And so I was beginning to see a type of hypocrisy, and I was beginning to lose faith that I was going to find my place in the world through that. And that kind of led me, and other music that I was listening to, started leading me more into looking into spirituality. Maybe there was something in spirituality that was deeper, that held deeper answers, that wasn't just able to recognize the problems, but actually had a deeper solution to these problems. And so now I was listening to other music that dealt more with spiritual themes. I was reading different types of books now that had spiritual teachings in them. And right in the group of my own friends, who were really a bunch of crazy people, but somehow they were got turned on to these books about bhakti, Bhagavad Gita, the Ishopanishad, and other books of kind of like simple teachings from Srila Prabhupada. And I started reading those, and they were really resonating with me big time. Boom, boom, boom. So at this point in my life, well, the funny thing was this. I was reading those books, but my friends who were like, they didn't even go to school. Like they were all dropouts from like about 15 years, 14 years old, living in the streets. They, more than anyone I had come across, were able to answer my questions, and I couldn't find a problem with what they were saying, because that was my joy in life, was like picking apart other people's philosophies and exposing the flaws in them. And as hard as I tried, these guys who were definitely not scholars, they were able to give me solid, consistent, good answers to all my questions, which led me to reading the books that they were reading. And at this point in my life, now I'm a little bit older teenager, like 18, 19. I began to develop faith in this Vedanta and Bhakti Vedanta. So from that moment, from that time until today, I feel a real powerful sense of gratitude to my friends, who, by the way, now they all hate each other because they're just too wild. But I don't choose sides in their battles. And when they battle, they really battle publicly and intensely. They're really like intense people. Huh? Okay, yeah, they're not. Oh no, they're not shy. But I just feel real gratitude to them, and in gratitude for sharing these insights. And that leads me back another step to the person that brought these insights to the Western world, because this incredible philosophy, it was really, the Bhagavad Gita kind of popped up in certain places, going back to, say, Edgar Allan, or not Edgar Allan Poe, going back to like Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson, going back to, who was it at Walden Pond? Henry David Thoreau. Back in this time period in America, the Bhagavad Gita began to show up a bit. But nobody was, and then there were certain yogis and so on that came gradually a little bit more, but no one was able to explain it and ignite it in people's hearts like Srila Prabhupada did. And he came right to the neighborhood where we all lived. We were just like 10 years later. And the story of how much he sacrificed and how he dedicated himself to bring this knowledge out of India to the whole world, to me, is one of the most heroic and beautiful things that anyone's ever done. And it's something that I have personally, that has been entirely life-changing for myself. So I always had an inclination to talk about these things, but now I could do it from a more informed place and with sharing the same knowledge that had changed my own life. Now, there are also people at that time that were practicing this that were really good at doing this, that became kind of my mentors. Indra Swami, who you see over here, is one of them. You know, people that said the same thing that was ignited in me was ignited in them about 15 years earlier. They dropped everything and gave their life to sharing it. And so that was very inspiring. And when I saw the lifestyle, I was now about 20, 21 years old. I become a monk. These men were about 15 years older than me, like 35 years old. To me, they seem like elders. Now, as a 60-year-old man, they seem like, my God, they were just kids too. But I really appreciated how they were living, what they were sharing. And I got the opportunity to become their assistants, to see life and live life the way that they were living it. And it's been the greatest gift to me. So there's a taste in living this life and trying to share this life that for me has been the most meaningful thing in my life. So that's why I like to do it. Thank you for asking. Okay. Thank you very much.
I asked that because there's always been an inclination inside of me too who would love to share and be able to spread spiritual wisdom. And I feel like, oh, I don't know enough, but I know. But there's still like that part of me. And so I resonate a lot with you and your message and your energy and your story. So thank you so much for sharing. And being an inspiration yourself.
Thank you. And one of the keys is that you share what you understand. You share what you realize, even if it's a little bit, and you never try to share beyond that. You just say, this is beyond me. That's okay. Anyone can admit that. That's fine. And you can begin already. But wisdom. Knowledge is one thing, wisdom is another. Knowledge is what we've learned. Wisdom is when that's really become imbibed in us, really become alive in us. And so there's no end to the growth in this. But as we learn more, we have more to share. And as we imbibe it, we can share it much more in a much more real way, and not in a less superficial way, but in a deeper way. And that's something that we can do for our whole life and just go deeper, and it never ends. It's like a lot of things that you do in this world, as you get older, they become more difficult. But this is something that as you get older, it just gets easier and nicer, and it's kind of like a job that you can have. I've never had a real job so much, but it's kind of like a job that the older you get, the more it's in demand, and so that's nice too. It has a lot of beautiful advantages, and you meet a lot of really nice people through it. So thank you very much. Thank you, Lena. Okay.
I tried to remember your name.
Kaustubha. We think cow, stew, and then bha with an aspirated B. Bha. Kaustubha. Really, it's Kaustubha. Kaustubha.
Where does it come from?
Kaustubha is a jewel that Krishna and Vishnu, they both wear on their chests. Whenever you hear descriptions of, especially Vishnu, but also Krishna, that jewel is almost always mentioned. Yeah. But I'm Kaustubha Das. So Kaustubha Das means I am the servant. So yeah. Thank you very much. Maybe one or two more questions before we end for the evening? Happy to take one or two more. Okay, or maybe our time is almost done today. It's been wonderful.
Why is Krishna blue?
Oh, okay, well, there's a good question. One last question. Why is Krishna blue? He's not exactly blue. Sometimes he's called blue, but when you read more descriptions, it's described, the word that's used is sham. Have you heard this word before? Sham. Sometimes Krishna is called Shama Sundara. He's got this, Sundara means beautiful. Shama Sundara, he's got this beautiful complexion. It's dark. They say the closest thing that we can compare it to is like a rain cloud, a monsoon rain cloud that's full of rain. It's dark, but it kind of has a bluishness to it. And this is the color of Krishna's skin. And when you see that skin, you're like, I've never seen a more beautiful complexion in my life. But the text will call it, it does amazing things. Like when you touch it, it turns different colors too. Like if you touch it and release, it just kind of gets a little more pinkish in there. Yes. And so it's just there's something about that beautiful complexion that he has. We think that the complexions of this world must be it. But when you read these texts, you feel like when people go on other planets, you find other kind of complexions. And when you go to the spiritual realm, there's still more kind of complexions. Imagine if, like, we live in a world of photography. We also live in a world nowadays of like very fast communication. But if we lived centuries ago, we might have never seen a zebra before. We might never have seen one. We might not have even seen a painting of one. So if someone went to Africa and saw a zebra and then came back and said, "Tell us about what you saw there." They say there's this animal, it looks like a horse, but it's got stripes. And then you say stripes, you mean like kind of like it looks a little bit like, no, I mean like black and white stripes, like full on stripes. And you'd be like, really? Yeah, you know. But it'd be hard to imagine. There's no horse with stripes like that. It doesn't exist. No. Horses are like, they're brown, they're black, sometimes they're white, sometimes they're a little mixture, but none of them have like these stripes. No, there's one and it's got straight up black and white, like completely white, completely black, striped horse. Then there's this other thing that's like a horse, but it's got a really long neck. Long neck, like a little bit longer than a normal horse. No, like much longer, like 1.5 times the length. No, I'm talking like 20 times, 30 times the length of a horse's neck. It's like it's got just tons of neck. No, there can't be this kind of horse. It doesn't exist. No, it does. So we shouldn't be surprised if we hear that beyond the realm of our scope, of this little tiny speck of a planet that we're on, that there are other kind of people with other kind of complexions. What to speak of the spiritual realm? There, Krishna has a beautiful Sham Sundar. It's a dark complexion. Radha has a very beautiful light golden complexion. Says it's like molten gold. Each one of those gopis, they all have different color complexions. It's just a beautiful, what's the word, poly-colored world, or multicolored kaleidoscope of beauty, manifests in so many different ways. The cows also have all different kind of colors, all different kind of breeds. Even here we see different breeds. Here they have a few of the gear cow. Are they? They have some of the same kind of color, but the gear cow has these long ears. Have you seen this before? A cow with like ears that are super long. They're so beautiful. Really sweet. They're very good natured too. And they give a lot of milk. So the gear cow is really like high level cow, like really appreciated cow in India. But so many varieties of cows. But when you read the sacred texts in Bhagavatam, it says Krishna's got all kind of varieties of cows. Different shaped heads, different complexions, all different colors. Just there's all kind of variety. And Krishna enjoys all different kind of varieties. Krishna is called the Kila Ras Amrita Murti. Rasa means different flavors of love. Rasa Amrita means the nectar flavors of love. Murti means the form. And Akila means that it can accommodate. Akila Rasa Amrita Murti means Krishna's form is the form of God that can accommodate all varieties of love, all varieties of approach. You can love him, and he can perfectly reciprocate with that love. That's Sri Krishna. So he's got his special, beautiful complexion, and he's surrounded by others with all kinds of varieties of special complexions as well. Okay. Thank you. That's it for tonight, everybody. It's been a joy spending this time with you. Please join us in the mornings if you wish. Please meet this gentleman here, Adikarta Prabhu. He's a person that's been practicing Bhakti Yoga for probably over 50 years. He's very wise. He's happy to you can always find him here during the day. And he's happy to spend time with people and really go deeper into sharing all that he's understood. So he's very approachable. And very kind and very knowledgeable. So he's a nice person to get to know. Thank you all so much. I'll see you in the Kirtan. I'll see you at Prasadam. I'll see you in the morning if you'd like to come. Thank you very much. Hari Om Tat Sat.